Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again. I'm going to talk now about Batwoman and the recently released pictures online giving us a first look at Javicia Leslie in the Batwoman costume. Just in case you didn't know, of course, Javicia Leslie is the lead actress for the second season of the show, following the previous lead actress Ruby Rose's departure from the show. There has also been a lot of debate because Javicia Leslie will be playing a new character called Ryan Wilder, and the fact that not only she's a black lead actress, but also the fact that I will believe she's a lesbian or bisexual character as well, has caused a lot of controversy to add to the already toxic debate surrounding the first season of the show. But we won't concentrate on that element because I've already covered that in previous videos concerning Batwoman, and you can check those out on the channel. What we will do is take a look at the first couple of photos that were released online, and I'm going to pay particular attention to this first one here, the main picture, which gives us a first facial shot of Javicia in the costume. And I'm going to be honest here, I am always rooting for the actors whenever they start off in a new lead role. I always want to see actors or actresses succeed, but I think it's the job of the showrunners and the studios to give the actor a best possible chance of succeeding in a lead role and be accepted by fans. So I'm going to have to say that this picture here, it's not the most flattering look for Javicia in the costume for the first time. It just doesn't leave a very good impression. You can see here that the cavil almost seems that it doesn't really quite fit the facial structure around her. It almost seems a bit too small for her face. The expression isn't the best either. She's got a very much of a pouting look. It doesn't look very stoic or heroic or particularly stylish in the role. Now, maybe this was the case of the costume designers. They maybe have to think a little bit more about how they're going to design the costume and make it more appropriate towards Javicia. If you look at the previous version worn by Ruby Rose, regardless of what you think about her as an actress, you can't dispute that her look as Batwoman was practically spot on in terms of the costume from the source material. And I think in comparison, Ruby Rose, although she's a lot slender, she had a much more of an angular face that I think they did very well to fit the kind of cowl around her. I know initially when she wore the costume, she wore it without the wig and it looked a bit odd, but once they added the wig on, it looked a lot better around Ruby Rose. But I don't think the cowl is suiting Javicia as much here. Going back to reference on the hair, now when Javicia was cast, I thought they were going to go for a much more of a permed, curlier afro hairstyle. If you go online, you'll see a couple of comic book art impressions of the black version of Batwoman, and you'll see her with a different style rather to the red straight hair. And I always felt that would have been the more appropriate style to fit for Javicia. So in this picture here, they've kept the red hairstyle. It doesn't look terrible, but again, I just don't think it's doing Javicia any favours in terms of the look. Now, many people have stated that this could just be the first stage. So when she comes into the show, she's going to come across the costume, she's going to try on Kate's version of the costume first, and then as you go on within further episodes, she'll then update it or change it to what she feels more suitable for her. And that's understandable, and that's a logical assumption to make, and that would fit very well in terms of the story, and that would help Ryan Wilder, the character she's playing, stand out on her own. And I think what we have to consider as well is that the screenshots that we're getting here is just a first impression, and a couple of pictures that we look on in a minute here indicate that we're only in the earlier stages of the filming of the episodes. I think most of these pictures here that we'll look at in a minute come from the second episode. So that theory that maybe she'll upgrade the costume later on does hold validity, and I wouldn't be surprised if halfway through the season we do get a different variant look of Javicia with the different hairstyle and maybe an adjustment of the cowl on it. But all I can judge is first impressions, and for me, yeah, I don't think it's the most convincing of the look, and particularly this is the first look of her in the Batwoman suit. And regarding the fact that the show has been steeped in a lot of controversy and negativity since its screening last year, I just wish they made a bit more of an effort to make sure that the first look of Javicia within this character was a much more of a stylish and impressionable look on it. But as we said, it's only the first look and it can change, upgrade later on within the show. So if we go and look at the other photos here, we have this picture here where we see a lot more of Javicia in the full frontal look within the costume, and I think overall the costume itself, it doesn't look bad on her. I've stated before in a previous video that she has a much more of a curvier, fuller figure than Ruby, who was very slender and slim and slight. Now I know a lot of fans have commented this as a positive because Javicia will look a lot more convincing in the fight sequences. That was one big criticism of the first season, is that Ruby just looked a little too much lightweight, so it didn't convince when we see her in all these hand-to-hand combat scenes with these soldiers who really should be overpowering her in the long run. So Javicia would at least look a lot more convincing in the fight sequences. One thing I also noticed here was the boots that she's wearing on here, and we can see here they have the kind of red square on the outside here. Doesn't look too bad, but the boots look a bit more bulky, and I seem to remember Kate, I think in her version of the costume, she had black kind of boots. They were much more sleek, and I think she had heels, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe she didn't, but I think the boots or the footwear was overall black, and I think that overall meshed better with the costume. So these ones here, yeah, they don't look as good in the full frontal shot. I initially thought that this was just boots that Javicia was wearing just to, out of more comfort, just to make her feel more comfortable within a suit, and necessarily we wouldn't see him when we get the final shot. And again, as I mentioned before, this could be just a first prototype idea, and as we go on later on in the show, they may change the boots and give her much more sleeker looking footwear to accommodate the rest of the costume. But other than that, she looks okay here. We can't really find too much areas here for criticism. She doesn't look terrible at all. The boots just stick out a bit, but again, they could change that, as I mentioned before. One thing we always have to remember is that the costume never looks as good in behind the set photos as what it does on screen, where they can use different filters and angles and effects to make the costume look a lot more better and give it that much more of a cinematic look. You know, I had many skeptic thoughts when I first saw the Flash for the first time in his costume, and also Melissa Benoist in the Supergirl costume for the first time, and then once you see it in live action, it looks a lot better. So we're just going to hold judgment for now, really wait until we see better photos, and also when we see the finished product to see what it's like in live action, because that's going to be the key as well. There are other shots on here where we see what many are presuming to be the Batmobile, or a version of the Batmobile on here. It's got very much of a sleeker, bulkier look about it. If you look at some of the other photos, you'll see they've got the motion capture tags that we associate so much now within movie making today. So when we see the finished product, we'll probably likely get some sort of bat designed bat spoilers sticking out from the back of the car, from the side of the car. Would it have the flamethrower engine port at the back that we associate so many times with Batmobile designs? We'll wait and see on there. I would say at first glance it's already made a better impression of me than the version of the Batmobile that we saw in the Matt Reeves Batman trailer, because that just looked like an old 70s car on here, but this looks a lot more modern looking and a lot more sophisticated. And again, if they can make the motion capture design parts fit in as well with the rest of the car design, then that will also look very good on this. So the Batmobile so far is looking okay from what we can see in the earlier pictures here. There are other shots as well where we just see Javicia here as Ryan Wilder just stepping out into a shop on here. We know from the previous details that we've been given that I think Ryan Wilder's going to be some sort of recovering alcoholic or drug addict as well. She's kind of got this really zany humour about her, but she's a capable fighter as well. So yeah, nothing wrong with these pictures here. We just see her standing in the shop. Maybe she's just stepping out from the shop, maybe she's shoplifting goods, I don't know. We don't really have a lot more context, so there's not really too much more criticism you can take from these pictures on here. She looks fine in the pictures here. It's not really anything particularly bad about these pictures on here. It's just really, if I'm assessing overall the first couple of shots that we've had, it's just really that first facial shot that we have on it. I just think that's not, it just doesn't do a good enough service, I think, to Javicia. I think they really needed to look at that again and really work better with the angles and make sure we had a much more of a superhero-esque look for Javicia as his first reveal hit. I think for a first reveal, they should have made a much more effort to show Javicia in some sort of background. There's no reason why they couldn't have done, because they would have as well had lots of test photos prior to her auditioning as well in the role. So they would have had enough footage of her in the costume to make sure that we get a good heroic shot first off when we see her for the first time in the costume. And I think that helps, because this show really needs as much positivity as it can. We all know the controversy surrounding the initial casting and the marketing with all the trailers, and the fact that, okay, it didn't enjoy very strong ratings in its first season, and yes, it did have a negative critical reception as well. You can check out my reviews of the show on the channel as well, but I just think they should have made a lot better effort to make sure that Javicia gets a chance. She gets a chance. She's not fighting some sort of negative backlash right from the start before she's even starred in an episode. Just give her much more opportunity, a much more chance to get a fair shake and a fair appraisal when the show airs on screens. So those are my thoughts on the initial look, our first look at Javicia Leslie in the Batwoman costume. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you more excited for this project? Are you less excited for this project? Do you think they could have done a lot more work in some of the shots on here? Or do you think it all looks really good and you think it's an improvement over the Ruby Rose version? But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.